Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome. It's a Sunday morning here in London towards the end of April 2020, which, of course, you'll know if you're with us live. Welcome to all of you who are joining us this morning. And also welcome to all of you who we know join us at other times on our podcast and on YouTube and in all of those places we are so pleased to have you with us. And this is Turning Towards Life with Lizzie and Justin from Thirdspace, our 134th week, Lizzie, and here we are continuing in this extraordinary pandemic time. It's a beautiful, again, we've had a run of gorgeous Sunday mornings, Lizzie, with the sun streaming in, and this is yet another one. And I'm right now, Lizzie, feeling very grateful for the sunshine and also very grateful for this practice. I was, when I got up this morning, I was thinking about all the different ways in which I can begin my day. And actually beginning like this is feels like a very powerful way of coming into the day, awake and alive and in relationship. So I've often said this, I'm so glad that everyone's with us. And even if nobody showed up, we'd still do it. But I'm glad you're all here. And I'm glad you're here too, Lizzie.
Yeah, I'm really glad to be here, particularly for this episode of Turning Towards Life. And I feel like there's quite a few people who have joined us this morning and you haven't been with us before because of our writer, our source generator this week, who is Melanie. And so the story of how come this source is that Melanie left me a message reading me the whole piece. And I remember the moment I was reading it. My little girl was sitting in her chair by the back door asleep. And she's got this bouncy thing she's asleep in. And I was just taking a moment, saw Melanie's messages had popped up, earlier in my phone. And I sat there and I listened to it. And I thought, oh, it'll be a message about something practical or something. I didn't know what it might be. And it was a beautiful several minutes piece of Melanie reading to me. And as I got further into the piece of her writing, I thought I was being more and more kind of moved by how beautiful it was. And so that's where it came from. It was just sent to me as a gift from Melanie. And here it is, because I just asked her permission to have it as a source. And the response to everybody underneath the source that we posted as well was just really beautiful. And I just feel very glad that people are seeing how wonderful Melanie's writing is and how beautiful this notion of bread and butter people is. And I want to also say hello to Anna, who actually coined the term bread and butter people and inspired Melanie to write this. And I think the text includes some of Anna's words too in some places. And I just want to say thank you for that, because it articulates something that seems to resonate with many, many people, and certainly with me, about these bread and butter people and what they are in our lives. So we're going to read, and just for the people who are here for the first time, so this is a conversation between Justin and I. It's completely live and unrehearsed. And we read the source, and often we might read just part of the source twice. So I'll read first and Justin might read the whole thing, or a little bit of it, or half of it, or something, depending on the time and the meaning of it. And then we'll have a talk about it. We'll have a chat about it. And feel free to comment in the things in the box below Facebook Live where we are on the video. We'd love to hear what you think. And also feel free to talk to each other beneath the video as well, because some beautiful conversations have been struck up over these 134 episodes, where people have got to know each other and become friends and be in conversation about very meaningful things. So thank you so much for being here, especially if it's your first time. And of course, all of the regulars, including Melanie, a huge thank you to you for being here and for listening. We're very much appreciating that.
Lizzie, before you read,
Yes.
can I just add something, which is for anybody who listens on the podcast? Of course, you won't have seen what below the video means, but below the video is what you see if you come and join our Facebook group, where Us Talking goes live, and is also you can play back later, so you can always find us there at just search for Turning Towards Life and come and jump in. You're really welcome to join us there, even if you haven't done so before.
Thank you. Okay, so here we go. This is Bread and Butter People by Melanie Loundis. She is the neighbour who is always pleased to see you, who years ago with her husband and kids had many animals. Her husband once stopped you on the way home and said, "Look what I've got." She doesn't know yet. And proudly showed you a piglet, which used to run to the door in the hall with its wriggly tail wagging when you came in. She's the Welsh lady with the foreign surname who lives with her Indian homeopath husband and does B&B the old way, taking in guests who stay in the bedroom full of books and character and a little mess, and carefully cooks what you like for breakfast and dinner. He is the father of your ex, who in latter years had greyhound dogs, and you could escape the politeness of the house each evening to walk with him, and Hannah or Rose, him listening, ever a safe and unjudgmental receptacle of your disclosures. There is a safeness about Bread and Butter People, a consistency. Yes, it's also Scottish Jean, who lost her husband after caring for him for many years and was in grief, and who had a gravelly, smoky Glaswegian voice that could reduce you to tears with a question. There is a kindness about them, a down-to-earthness and everydayness, no glamour or allure, but something deeply nurturing, no eggshells around them. There's no fear that they're putting on an act for you, that they may be different towards you when you are not there. No fear that what they show you is different to how they are to their core. This is the way they are, consistent. And you understand something about consistency now. It's not all about always showing up the same way. It's about consistently showing up how you are, honestly, whether that be happy or sad, calm or troubled. I think of the times people have actually delivered, the mates that show up, the people who come back, who care, who check in, who stay, who make tea and stir in a little extra sweetness without making a fuss. The bread and butter people in our lives, the staple friendships, the kind dough that needs our self-esteem.
It's so wonderful to hear you read that, Lizzie, and to hear Melanie in it too. So I'm going to read part of this. And what I'm also going to invite us all to do is to see what it would be like to listen to Melanie's words from the place in you that is like this. See if you can take a moment to find the part of you that is down to earth every day, deeply nurturing, no eggshells, consistent, and have these words speak to that part. There is a kindness about them, a down-to-earth kindness, an everydayness, no glamour nor allure, but something deeply nurturing. No eggshells around them. There's no fear that they're putting on an act for you, that they may be different towards you when you're not there. No fear that what they show you is different to how they are to their core. This is the way they are, consistent. And you understand something about consistency now. It's not about always showing up the same way. It is about consistently showing up how you are, honestly, whether that be happy or sad, calm or troubled. I think of the times people have actually delivered, the mates that show up, the people who come back, who care, who check in, who stay, who make tea and stir in a little extra sweetness without making a fuss, the bread and butter people in our lives, the staple friendships, the kind dough that needs our self-esteem.
Justin, I'm so grateful that you made that invitation to listen from the part of me, us, that is those things you said, the down-to-earthness, the everydayness. And I felt so, when you were reading, contacting that part of myself, I felt so grateful to be seen for the things that I can be. And I notice that so often the world values the things that are not this thing, that are something fancier, something more glamorous, something more Instagram worthy. It's like there's a way that this speaks to the part of us humans that's doable, that's ordinary, that's not so, doesn't involve some performance or some great production or some extraordinariness. It's just the everyday, what happens in the life and the stories we have and the way we move through the world and interact with people. And I feel so grateful to have this very, very much opened up in my perception. So what happened when I read this and when I heard Melanie read it to me in the longer version the first time was I started to think about all of the people that are this in my life, and this huge swell of gratitude came up for all those people and acknowledging them for what's probably like nothing, but it's everything. And it just seems such a gift to have these words, to put that as the forefront of value feels like such a gift. So it's, you know, I suppose I'm just like lots of people probably fall foul of this, seeing what people are willing to share on the internet or even in social interactions or whatever, which are very limited now. But the relief of it not being the facade feels so life-giving to me. Like I find myself getting really excited that the ordinariness is enough, that I don't have to kind of clamber for some other life, because actually the bread and butterness of my life, the bread and butter in a meal, is really the staple. It's the foundation. It's the majority of our experience and what we actually value, really. And I feel so grateful that these words have been made so that I can wriggle into that and let it all be enough somehow.
I love what you're saying, Lizzie, about ordinariness. I've been thinking a lot about, partly because of something I've been teaching with our students on our coaching course, and has had me thinking a lot about authenticity, this much thrown around word in our culture that, like many things in our culture, it has been packaged up in the way that you described it, Lizzie, which is in order to be authentic, whatever that means. And I think Melanie's words most beautifully get to what this is. But the sort of the common cultural view that we have of it is it's something you have to construct with great effort. It's really paradoxical. If I do, I mean, even in the field of our own development and self-care, maybe I'll be authentic if I do 500 yoga classes and write 3 posts on my blog every day and find beautiful pictures of me and talk. We can sort of get into with anything, a sort of presentation of ourselves to the world that's very, very far away from the actual contactful, direct, unmediated experience of just being a human. And so much of our culture seems to have been built this way, and it really fuels our being frantic, and it fuels our feeling of always falling short, and it fuels our need to be defensive and to make sure that we never ever ever get shamed or hurt or anything in front of anyone else. And it fuels all of this sort of presentation of something that's really a long way away from us. And then we meet people like Melanie is talking about, who aren't up to that, who have, one way or another, who have come to see that all of this giant effort to create an image that's not close in to our own hearts and our own experience, doesn't protect us, doesn't get us what it is that we were seeking for in the first place. But more than that, I think the thing that I'm really appreciating about Melanie's way of writing about it is that she's pointing us into the relational field of this. This is not about, well, if you just happen to sort of live close to your own heart and close to your experience, you will feel better and life will be groovy. That's not actually where Melanie is pointing us at all. What she's pointing us into is when we find a way to be that way, who we can be for others. And that, I think, is, to me right now, is the most important part of this being human, is who we end up being for others, because that's the ground from which the whole world gets taken care of. And you're certainly one of those people for me, Lizzie. I think it's one of the things that makes this conversation, for me, the way it is just being able to be here with you and to feel completely welcome. There's nothing, because of the kind of person you are, I don't need to do any bigging myself up or making myself small or defending myself or any of those kind of things. So this way that Melanie is pointing us to opens up a sort of a vast clearing into which other people can step. And the one of the things that was happening for me when you were reading was thinking about the ordinary day-to-day acts of letting go that we have to get into in order to be able to be this way, the way that Melanie talks about. Because really, I think what I feel and hear in what she's saying is what happens when we've let go of our need to make ourselves feel better about who we are by efforting all the time, or by trying to appear a certain way, and in a way what we've sort of, as we've relaxed into, like you say, a very, very profound ordinariness, which is at once wonderfully mundane, as in the real meaning of mundane, like of the earth, and also, of course, rich and beautiful and varied in a way that all of our attempts to sort of kind of create an image can only get a tiny taste of. They're sort of like very pale shadows of something that's right here all the time.
Oh my goodness, it's so sweet as you're talking, Justin. I can't get this image out of my head of you lending me a pen from your pencil case. And me just knowing what your pencil case is like, and that it has this little different color pens in, and all of the drawing that you do, and all of the writing up your incredible notes and everything. And that when I'm turn up slightly half baked and don't even have a pen, that one of the bread and butter things you do for me is that I can borrow your purple pen from your pencil case, that you have a pencil case in your little bag. And I just feel really moved by all these ordinary moments that are the in-between things. They're not the main event. And yet that's where all the bread and butterness comes from. And it's really, I think I said this word just now, but like, it's such a relief, like you said, that we could be, and I think Melanie says it beautifully, we could be consistently how we are. And that is comforting to people. It's an opportunity for people. It's safe for people. So when we show up safe and open, that's what happens to other people too. And I'm just thinking of Scottish Jean with her Glaswegian accent, who most likely has no idea what kind of impact she's had on Melanie. And yet this opening, because she was willing to have her heart displayed through her voice and the way it was gravelly, and could move Melanie to tears just with the sound of her voice, because that openness was there, Melanie's life is different. And mine is now different. And I just feel really don't know what the word is, like maybe humbled, like, oh, we're all just bread and buttering along, and that is to be held sacred. And maybe after today we can walk around and reflect on our lives and see the bread and butterness and be filled up by that. And for me personally, it's an amazing thing because I have a grass is greener, the grass is always greener personality pattern, which for lots of years has been like, is there something better happening? Am I missing something? Is there someone else, somewhere else I'm supposed to be? And then somehow the undoing of this into that pattern is really gentle and beautiful and kind and warm and like, it's not violently undoing a pattern. It's working alongside everything because it's just here. And it's like diverting my attention to the bread and butterness helps me feel like this place is mine, like my life is my life, and I've not dropped through the wrong hole into a life that's a different life or something. And I feel very, somehow the effect that this is having on me is I feel really welcome. I feel really welcome by all of the people who've ever like talked to me in ordinary ways and just said small ordinary things, like the guy with the piglet. And somehow in view of this and having this be where I might see from, where I might feel from, experience from, it feels like life is very, very full in the best kind of way, full of things that naturally happen, and not in a way that I have to fill it up, but that the happening of life, the happenstance of life, is itself fulfilling.
I love what you're saying about humility, Lizzie. That seems to me that the way that Melanie has written and who she's written about is such a beautiful evocation of what humility is. Because we may have spoken about this before, that we misunderstand humility as some kind of shrinking away. That's sort of one common, apparently common sense definition of humility is like to be humble is to be very, very small. But what I can feel in Melanie's descriptions of all of these people who are so clearly important to her, and I'm with you about being touched by their presence through her words. Like I feel like I know something of each of these people and that their lives can come through and reach me. I can feel how what they're doing at one and the same time is giving up any kind of self-aggrandizement. It's like, here I am in this life with this grief and this joy and this ordinariness and this suffering and this day and these dishes and all of that. But at the same time, when we meet people like the people Melanie's writing about, we can also feel that they're not shrinking away from us. So and any of us, I think, we can have glimpses for ourselves, even if we don't live this way all of the time. We can feel this in ourselves when we're finding ourselves in contact with just what's here. However I am now is how I am. It's sort of that kind of welcome to ourselves. I am sad, I am lonely, I am love-filled, I am delighted, I am bored, I am. But at the same time, what we're not doing is, when we don't shrink away from that, but we can inhabit that place fully, which is the sort of the two sides of humility are not being bigger, not trying to be bigger than we are, but also not being smaller than we actually are.
Yeah.
When we find ourselves that way, or we meet other people who are that way, it's a reminder to us that we can be that way too. And that you talked about welcome, that there really is something to welcome in the here-ness of life, the isness, the thisness of life now. When I think about other people, bread and butter people in my life, Lizzie, I can feel how what they do is they remind me, they welcome me here, and then they remind me to get up to the same thing, which is to be welcoming myself and welcoming them here. And of course, this time of this lockdown time, and this what may be for many of us quite a long time of having to live quite differently to ways that we've been used to. What Melanie has written and brought us here is so, first of all, I think that many of us are catching a glimpse of this because so much of our rushing around in everything else has sort of been taken away. But it's also, to me, it's a reminder of how this is probably one of the central acts of care that we can get involved in, is to find our place to the place that Melanie is talking about, so that we can be that for one another. It's not just about, I mean, I'm so glad that Melanie can tell us about all of these people and I'm touched by all of them. And then I find myself wanting to be wondering about all the things, all the ways in which I could cultivate letting go and taking on, so that I can be this way consistently. And of course, Melanie's language about consistent isn't about being one way apart from the way underneath all of those ways, which is the being in contact with the way that we are and bringing that to everyone, wanting to be that way with everyone, with my family, with whom I share a house, and with the neighbours who I know live next door, and with all of it.
Yeah, it's a really, really beautiful invitation. And I really love what you're saying about humility as well. And I was wondering just in the moment what it's like to feel humility. And I noticed that when you invited us at the beginning to acknowledge the part of ourselves that is this and listen from that place, I recognized in myself it takes humility to accept that, because I have read this and thought, oh my gosh, I'm completely admiring of Scottish Jean and of Melanie's ex's father and the Welsh lady and the neighbour who bought a piglet. And I mean, I've immediately thought those people are amazing and in some way elevated them. And so for me to then accept the part of me that you suggest we all are, I felt like I had to have humility to say, yeah, actually, I can see that about myself. But a huge part of me wants to say, oh, no, everyone else has got this. And I'm not very good at this. I'm not very ordinary and I'm not. But actually, I felt like I could employ some humility and go, okay, I can. And then I began to listen from that place and feel seen for that part of me that is like this and that is consistently showing up the way that whatever I'm like, that's what I am. And I could begin to value myself for being bread and butter. But it takes humility to say that to myself and to take a deep breath and value myself for the thing that is being invited, rather than making it all external, like, oh no, everybody else is like that but not me. And so this invitation to humility that this is presenting us, it also takes humility to accept that this is all of us. This is me too. It's not just like a world of wonderful people out there that will bestow their ordinariness on me and I'll feel better. I actually am part of this too. And that I can be one of those people, just like you're saying, who can bring my everydayness and my down-to-earthness and my realness and my vulnerability and my brokenness and my joy and humour and making a cup of tea-ness right to everybody else too. So really, I'm really grateful that you invited us to see it that way, because it helps me also really feel what this is, instead of letting it be something that somebody wrote, but like feeling the doorway through which it's inviting us, but actually going through the door into the feeling of what this is. I'm really grateful for that.
Also, Lizzie, it's striking me that in order for us to do this, it can become a practice in our giving up our comparison with other people, which is part of the whole deal that gets us not like this way. And I'm aware in reading Melanie's words that any of us, of course, I found this one way of reading Melanie's words is to go, look at all of those wonderful people. I'm not like that.
Yeah.
And then already I'm moving myself further away from the possibility that I might, with humility, be in contact and welcome with who I am, and then I can be in contact and welcome with other people, however they are. And that's the deal, that the whole possibility that Melanie's words are inviting us into. But we're so prone to going, not me. I should be like that, but that's not me. That already we're compounding our own difficulty. And the thing I've been finding since last week, because we talked a little bit about this last week, about what it takes to be the one who can welcome yourself sufficiently that you can be a welcome everywhere, which bread and butter people are. I've been noticing over the last week how the natural world around me isn't caught up in all of the pandemic stories. The trees are sprouting leaves, and the flowers are blooming, and the sun happens to be out, and the birds are flying around, and they're all wonderfully untroubled by all of this, our circumstance. And when I remember that, I've been able to let myself a little bit more feel welcomed by them. And as I let myself feel welcomed by them, I'm much, much more able to let go of all of the neuroses and self-obsession and comparison and worry. And then I can touch more into what Melanie's asking of us, and I sort of inviting us into. And I wanted to bring that in because it's clear to me that in order to do what you're saying, it really helps to find that in ourselves that can welcome ourselves. And it's a big deal sometimes for us to do that on our own. So what else can we rely on that will welcome us?
Yeah.
Well, the table that I'm sitting at can welcome me, and the floor can welcome me, and the trees that aren't caught up in any stories can welcome me, and that then might just allow us to let go enough that when we speak to someone else in our household, if we're living with other people at the moment, or we are on Zoom or on a phone call or reading something, that we can keep on practicing the arts of welcome. And then there'll be more of this bread and butterness around in the world.
Yeah. And actually, just it's making me reflect on the fact that, so I live on a street with multiple terraced houses, so we're all very, very close together. And the bread and butter moves people are making towards one another are like never before. And yesterday, for example, a guy on the road next to us texted or WhatsApped us all and said, I've just found out that there's a lady around the corner who's got loads of peonies, and you might not know because you might not be going to the shops, but if you text me your address, she can deliver them to you on Tuesday, and you can give her the money. You can leave the money in an envelope or transfer it to her bank account or something, but I've just thought that you might like to know. And our whole street was like, oh my goodness. And people are going to have flowers delivered to them because this guy thought that we might want some flowers in our lives, and it's peony season. And that's one of like hundreds of little things that happen that wouldn't have happened without us being in these conditions, these strange times. And so somehow at this time, reflecting on the bread and butterness feels really like there's loads of material. Like there's loads to look at, to see, to feel, even though we're not able to stand and listen to Jean talking about her husband who died. We can see it in other ways. And I also know that not everybody is as fortunate to live on a street with lots of people and be in a WhatsApp group too. And there are people who are very, very isolated in this. And in one way, I think that's why I love Turning Towards Life, because this can be a bread and butter place that people can come to. And, I know people who've passed this on to people that have really benefited of having something to listen to every week that connects them back into themselves, that connects them back into bread and butterness. And I know for me, one of the deep appreciations I have is of the bread and butterness of Thirdspace, which is this little collective of us that does this project and other things. And one of the qualities I've always felt of any event that we've run, of anything we've ever done, is the ordinariness of them. Like there's no fanfare and there's no drama. It's like earthy, practical. How do we do this in the most straightforward, contactful, human way? And I feel like that's the value I receive from this whole thing too. That you and I show up here in a way that feels real, that feels ordinary. And part of the gift of us just talking to each other like this is that, of course, in the back of my mind, I know there's people listening to us, but actually the contactfulness between you and I is where the conversation is generated from. And because of the way you and I know each other, it's ordinary. So I don't feel nervous. I don't feel like, oh, we're broadcasting to the world, I have to be something. I feel ordinary. And I really hope that that's a gift that people can join in with too. And I know that they have and will and are doing now. And I want to encourage anybody also who's listening that if you do know somebody who's lonely or who is vulnerable and you can see that, maybe you could send this to them and just let them feel the contactfulness of this conversation, of any of the conversations that you think might resonate with them. You can go to the website, which is turningtowards.life, look at all the titles, send them a link to one of the conversations that you think might help them depending on what they're going through. And this really is like a database now of different topics that we've talked about, of different things that could be really helpful and could invite people into more community than they're able to access right now because of the stuff we're going through. And of course, it's all just shareable, you know, with no strings attached. You just share it and you just send it around depending on what you think people need. And that could be a really lovely bread and butter act that all of us can do. Justin and I frequently talk about the way that we listen to our own things. When I listened the other day, Justin texted you, I was like, oh gosh, I was, I don't know, in a bit of a kerfuffle, and I thought, well, maybe just hearing mine and Justin's voices might just settle me. And so I listened, and it really helped. And so I can vouch for it myself that it's helpful to listen and to be with us. So I'm looking at our time, and I know that we've gone over it a little bit, and I want to say a massive thank you to Melanie, a massive thank you to Anna, who inspired this piece in Melanie, and a massive thank you to all of the bread and butterness that we're in receipt of as individuals, but also as Thirdspace. You know, I really feel like our community and the people who love us and support us really do that very, very strongly and beautifully. And I want to say thank you to everybody who listens each week, everybody who comes to our events, all of our graduates of our programs. The way that they love us right now is very precious to me in my heart as I'm feeling it. And I'm very grateful for that, and grateful for you, Justin, that we get to do this. So thank you.
Me too.
And we will see you next Sunday. Thank you for listening, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.